Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast. BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Well, today we are revisiting the case of Elisa Lam. Some people think that this one is just been opened and shut, that it is just completely solved and understood, and we know everything. Everything is just taken care of, neat little package. And there are other people out there who think that there are still some unanswered questions. I first found out about Elisa Lam because of those countdown video series on YouTube that would talk about like unsolved mysteries, or especially about suspicious, bizarre behavior that was caught on CCTV cameras. Because that's one of the things that really changed this case. To give the smallest introduction possible to the Elisa Lam case, Elisa Lam was found dead in the Cecil Hotel in a water tank, very specifically in a water tank that was located on top of the roof back in 2013. This was something that really just ignited the internet, because there's a guy out there who wrote a book about the Maura Murray case, the disappearance of Maura Murray. We don't say his name on this channel, but he said that the Maura Murray case was the first true crime case for the internet era. And I was like, I actually would say that the Elisa Lam case was the first true crime case of the internet era, because it pulled so many people into it. Like, it pulled so many people into true crime who weren't normally involved with true crime and like real life mysteries and such. And it got people just sort of thinking like the way that a true crime follower would start to think, and they would start participating in the discussions and discussing theories. I think it really changed a lot about the kind of culture of the internet. But that's more about what we talked about last time, so that's our bit of our introduction. The thing is, though, with Elisa Lam, we have very clear media of her demonstrating some bizarre behavior on a CCTV camera in the Cecil Hotel, which the name was changed to Stay on Main. But, she's displaying some bizarre behavior. And when I was first learning about the case, you could watch the video, and you could read the comments, and overwhelmingly, people were like, yeah, this looks creepy, until you learn that she's having a psychotic episode. The biggest confession that I had to make was, I have never seen someone have a manic episode. I mean, psychotic is a bit of an extreme word. Elisa Lam had bipolar disorder, and she was medicated for it, but most people said she was coping well with her medication, but people were just all like, she's having a manic episode, this is on the verge of a breakdown. And that's kind of what we had to go with. Many people in the comments were saying that, but then other people were insisting that they could see like the toe of someone else's shoe in the video, that there was another person there, or even that she was talking to somebody who was out of frame in the video. One of the largest theories that actually came to us from Cody Fry, nonetheless. Cody Fry was the person who put up the video footage in normal time. You can hear people talk about like the Cody Fry footage. The police released the videotape of Elisa Lam in the elevator that had been slowed down to 33%. And so you're watching a slowed copy of it. And then Cody Fry realized that, so he put out the full speed clip. And then a lot of people were like, oh, well, her behavior doesn't seem that weird once you're watching it in normal time. But still, though, Cody Fry put forward the theory that people at the Stay on Main had murdered Elisa Lam to generate publicity. Because, there was a time when you were to Google her name, an advertisement for the hotel came up right there on Google. So, I mean, this is also something that had been a hotel where Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, had been at, and they even made sort of a Chinese movie about this. Not the Chinese documentary, but like a fictional film about somebody dealing with Elizabeth Short and someone trying to do sort of like a spooky little video on the Cecil Hotel, and then they eventually realized this is an immoral thing. It was a kind of a poorly done video. it was like kind of it was a big budget for a short film, but it was kind of executed in a poor manner in the sense that they actually filmed in the Cecil Hotel, and they could have done so much more. Okay, so what happened to Elisa Lam? Girl in an elevator, acting strangely, ends up dead in a water tank on top of the roof a couple hours later. What happened? It doesn't take long to research Elisa Lam on the internet without encountering the videos of John Lorden, who hosts the show Brain Scratch, as well as a few other things, Searchlight and Case Cracked, Crime After Crime. I became a fan of the Lorden Arts channel because of his work on Elisa Lam, like most of us did. And he approached it in the sense that he was like, lots of people are talking about the case, but they aren't getting into the substance material. And he did probably the best YouTube coverage of the case. But he said something recently in one of his videos when he was like, to this day, I cannot tell you if she died accidentally or there was something else more sinister going on. Well, I would make the bold claim right now that this was an accidental death. And this was one of the things, as I said, it pulled me back into true crime again, because you really began to notice that a lot of the conclusions that I myself and many other people were coming to on the internet were coming together all in one place, that this was an accidental death. Why? When someone is experiencing disorientation around a water source, the risk of drowning is so much higher, and the risk of death is so much higher. It's really the risk of death, because with Elisa Lam, it's not the issue that she got into a water tank and she didn't know how to swim. It's not that at all. It's that the risk of death is higher, because it's my personal suspicion that Elisa Lam was in the elevator. She's acting strangely. Then she goes on out. She goes up the fire escape, because this is a thing about the internet and how this case was so widely reported. You have these excellent photos of the Cecil Hotel and their rooftop. The fire escapes are so easily accessible to the roof, and they were just like, they had to do it that way because of the building codes, the regulations. They had to have it that way. You could walk up there so easily, and even though the things were marked that you shouldn't be entering the roof, she did anyway. Numerous ways she could have done it. She could have done it through the door. She could have done it through the fire escapes, which had ladders to the roof. And other people have gone to the Cecil Hotel and even showed that they had not like skylights, but it's sort of like those kind of entry port hatches, a hatch, if you will. They had hatches that could go up to the roof, countless ways. And it's my personal suspicion that in her own disoriented state, which was caused by her manic episode, she entered the tank voluntarily. Yeah, she entered the tank voluntarily. She probably didn't realize that the water was so low that she wasn't able to reach the surface. And she wasn't able to pull herself back out. Once again, in a disoriented state, the risk of death is so much higher when someone is around water. Look at the case of Henry McCabe. Look at the smiley face killers theory. Look at the Manchester Canals pusher theory. Look at the disappearance of Brandon Lawson. One of the possibilities about how Brandon Lawson died is that he could have drowned in the Colorado River or something like that, or possibly. And even the case of Kaylin Lauder, she was found in the Jordan River, but her body was probably entered the water into something called the Little Cottonwood, but that's a different case. Different case. So the thing is, though, with Elisa Lam, I could almost go out on a limb and say that this was the case of somebody who died accidentally. Now, in the water tank, the hatch was found not open. Yes, it was found open, not closed. But I don't think that makes any difference at all whether the lid, the hatch, the top of the water tank was open or closed. Because even if she had been dead inside and it was closed from the outside, that would just mean that an attendant could have closed it. You had to climb up a ladder to get to the water tank. Once again, we have the photos of the kind of way you get up there. Someone could have closed it without looking in. Well, that might sound a little bit abnormal. Entirely possible. This was most likely an accidental death. And this is just the case of someone being disoriented around a body of water. And once again, once you have that understanding, look at some of the true crime cases out there, and you just recognize that this is a pattern. This is a pattern. What caused Elisa Lam's behavior? I mean, she had her medication with her, and thanks to the Lord and Arts channel, we are aware of that. We were aware of that from Brain Scratch, that she actually had at least 5 different types of medication with her. One of the things, though, is, in the video, Elisa Lam is wearing a shirt that is from an IPA company, like a pale ale, an alcoholic beverage. And one of the things is, I was at the doctor's office once, and I asked the doctor, what really happens if you take medication when you're on alcohol? And the doctor's like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, what's the spectrum of things that's going to happen? Is it going to do anything bad, or are you going to die? Like, what's going to happen if you take your medication and you're drinking alcohol? And the doctor said, she told me that with most types of medication, if you take it with alcohol, they will function less effectively. They won't work as well. My personal suspicion is that while Elisa Lam was traveling, she started drinking alcohol at some point, and perhaps that pushed her off her medication a little bit. It started to function less effectively, because what they said was, you get conflicting things about this. One source, the leper communist one, the guy who found the door hold button, who solved that part of the equation, he said that there was alcohol found in her heart, and I believe the Lord and Arts channel said that the alcohol was found in her bile. So she had consumed alcohol at some point. Once again, if you have bipolar disorder and you consume alcohol, most likely the effects of your medication are going to slowly wear off. So I believe that's what caused her bizarre behavior. Then, she's in a disoriented state. She probably entered the rooftop, probably spent about at least 15 to 30 minutes on the rooftop. And she's probably just kind of moving about and exploring, and she just thinks that she's just having the time of her life, to be honest. And then she might have even entered the tank 100% voluntarily. It's possible she could have fallen in. They left the tanks open. I believe when the Chinese documentary did their thing about the Cecil Hotel, they went up there after the death of Elisa Lam, and they saw that the water tanks were still open. But one of the things that should have been solved with this is that's obviously a bad thing to do. What they should do is, they should have had a building code, which would be like a water tank that is higher than so many meters must be locked at all times. Not to mention, when it comes to water tanks like that, why don't they have some sort of escape rope or something, or some sort of chain that you could pull on or something, in case somebody were to ever fall in? You could have a very simple safety mechanism. I actually wrote an op-ed about this for the LA Times, but of course something like that doesn't get published, some nobody like me writing something, but you wrote it out. It's just why don't they have these types of building codes and safety measures? Even if it prevents 1 or 2 more deaths in the future, that's 1 or 2 more people that could be saved by simple safety measures. So that's most likely what happened with the case of Elisa Lam. Although, I think that most things are pretty much well cleared up. There probably isn't any other person in the elevator video. What they actually see is the heel of Elisa Lam's sandal, and she kind of has an unusual pivot with her walking, and it looks like there might be a foot there, but there isn't. And also, no sound or audio, so you can't prove that she was talking to somebody else. And once again, I just think it's someone who got a little bit startled by pushing the door hold button, which paused the elevator for 2 minutes. Door hold is, of course, an old-fashioned thing that people would do while they were moving luggage up to the hotel. So it pauses the elevator for 2 minutes, and she was a little startled by that. But you can definitely see she's undergoing somewhat of a manic episode, because she pushes all the buttons. She's on the 14th floor. It would be very accessible for her to get up to the rooftop after that. Only has to climb 2 more flights, or maybe 1.5 flights or something like that if you were to get to the roof. But here's a big thing. I don't believe any of the theories about Elisa Lam investigating invisibility cloak technology and the Canadian government took her out. I don't believe anything about the tuberculosis outbreak, that she was killed by the Illuminati and they left her signature on the scene. I mean, you just can't really accept those far-out theories at this point. I mean, her family openly said in the LA courtroom that this is the case of a 21-year-old who fell off her medication and that she entered into kind of a manic state, and then the disoriented state led to her death falling into the water tank. But this is just something that goes to show you, internet media can really change things. The internet can really change things when it comes to true crime. This was a case that pulled a lot of people into it. And it's also like, I would just say that if you ever watch the film Dark Water, there's a scene where the ghost in the movie Dark Water is standing behind a sheet of frosted glass, and the ghost wears some similar clothing. There's like people are just saying, oh, the ghost is wearing Elisa Lam's clothing. It's a little bit similar. I actually think it might be a schoolgirl outfit, but it looks quite similar to Elisa Lam's. Odd coincidence, but odd coincidence all the same. Alright, well that's all for me now, and until next time, what do you think?